everyone. Welcome to the first podcast organized by the Policified. For that, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Deepak Gupta and Dr. Priyanka with us today. Dr. Deepak Gupta is the founder and director for Center for Child and Adolescent Wellbeing. He is a senior pediatric psychiatrist at Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. He holds his MD and DNB in psychiatry. He has also been a fellow at International Institute of Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Dr. Priyanka Halvasia is a child psychologist at Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. She is also the co-founder of Ehsaas, an association of school counselors and psychologists. She has also worked with a number of schools in New Delhi and contributed in research over ADHD, self-esteem, and impact of thinking of life. Their teamwork has touched numerous young lives and families. Thank you for joining us today to share your insights on contemporary mental health status. So moving today with our questions, I think let's talk about mental health and how it has been viewed today in our society. As we can see, mental health has been in limelight due to the pandemic and the socio-economic reasons. So what has been your experience in terms of acceptance over mental health in the past few months?
See, so according to me, mental health was always a very important part.
Right.
And mental health, we can't see that with pandemic or without pandemic. According to me, mental health has helped since I am in this field for more than 24 years now. I believe that mental health was always an integral part, but only was that people were not giving importance to it.
Right.
People were trying to put it after the physical health. People were sidelining the mental health issues.
Right.
Now, with this pandemic coming up, people, and especially the lockdown, people have got a lot of time to think about themselves, about their own well-being, about their own emotional well-being, about the chaotic lifestyle they're living into it, about their own patterns of living, and which has given a lot of introspection to people about themselves. And simultaneously, with pandemic happening and pandemic taking so much toll on people, whether it is on the household front, whether it's on the financial front or economic front, whether it's on the career front, the school education front, whether it's any other works front, in all the way that has also put a toll on most of the people in current scenario. So with this sort of a thing, so there's two aspects. One, people having more introspection about themselves and realizing that they have to work on their own mental health and well-being, and simultaneously the toll on people and the stress on people creating more of increase in mental illness, especially depression, anxiety, and sleep problems in people. That is what I've seen in the last 5 to 6 months since this COVID thing happening.
Okay, so, and what about you, Priyanka ma'am? What's your stand on it?
Well, I think people have started talking a lot about mental health for sure in the last several months. They have spoken in length about how it is impacting each other and stuff. I personally still feel that it has become a topic of conversation, but how many people are open to looking into how things are impacting themselves is still to be questioned.
Right.
I personally feel that we Indians are very tolerant in some sense. And as a result, what happens is that we are tolerant for wrong reasons and wrong places. So we are tolerant and we tolerate our emotional pain till the time it is that level that we cannot tolerate it anymore. And then we ring the bell, okay, fine, let me break the ice and let me just get help now. And that's when they kind of, I'm not too sure if I use still the word acceptance, but that's when they seek support. But I think people, like a physical illness, mental illness is not that well taken in that sense that, okay, fine, I have fever, I need to see somebody. It is not like that. I am feeling low for a while, I need to see somebody, doesn't go in parity still, in my opinion. people want to hide it, conceal it. They want to talk about others going through the same pain, but their own in that sense. So yeah, it still needs a long way to go, in my opinion.
Right. So initiating a dialogue about mental health at both informal and formal settings has been a challenge in your society, in our society actually. So what is your take on the basis of your enriched experience as a mental health professional?
Sir?
Yeah, so see, according to me, people have to understand that the time has come that we need to understand that mental health is a very, very important aspect of ourselves.
Right.
The time has come, we need to invest in our own self. And if we will invest in our own self, then only we can invest or help others.
Right, yeah.
Unfortunately, people think that they can help others, but they don't see that the buck starts with you and ends with you. So the first thing I always believe that if you want to help others, first help yourself. And that's what I think has been the biggest learning for me in this whole lockdown, that work on yourself, help yourself, understand yourself, work on various aspects of mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, and how much can you connect with them and integrate with your own physical health. How can you have a synchronization in mind, body, and soul? Right now, we are trying to emphasize on mind and body, but I strongly believe that this is beyond mind and body. So how can we have a synchronization and symphony between mind, body, and soul? And that has been one of the biggest learning and biggest practicing in the last 6 months since the lockdown. And yes, and as I gone into this journey, before I speak about other aspects, as we'll go in the interview and the discussion, I can say that the more you try to understand about your own mental health and emotional health, the more you're able to see how you can help others in a right way.
Right.
See, when we talk about mental health, we don't have to preach. Unfortunately, people start preaching and giving lectures. And then people get shut off. We don't have to make them shut off. Because when you start talking about then, about mental health, mental illnesses, it's like one of another lectures, like a professor talking about a topic. No, you have to connect with people. And once we have that connection with people, then people connect with you. And then they try to put it into their own life and their practice. Otherwise, everything is available on YouTube, videos, and so many things are available on Google, and videos are available. But then people don't put it into practice. So that is what I need to say at this point of time, that first invest in your own mental health and then create that context. And once that context is created, then you start reaching to people and then you have the right connection.
Dr. Priyanka?
So could you repeat your question once again, please? I missed it.
Sure. So what I was saying, that initiating a dialogue about mental health has been a challenge in our society. So how do you think we can, as a mental health professional, we can actually break this challenge and move against our apprehensions?
Like Dr. Deepak has already rightly said, I think the buck starts with you. You need to start talking to yourselves about it, and which means identify that, okay, fine, yes, I am feeling angry.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm feeling sad. Yes, I am fearful. Yes, it upsets me when my parent says XYZ to me. Yes, it upsets me when my friends don't do this or my friends do this. So I think before we can have that kind of dialogue, like Dr. Deepak is rightly saying, with others, we need to have that dialogue with our own self. We need to identify what are we going through.
Right.
And when we give them enough importance, when we give, look, if we have a stomach ache, we think about our stomach ache. We talk about then our stomach ache, because we are talking to ourselves about that stomach ache. Then it's easier to talk to others about the same.
Exactly.
Now, even in friends, teenagers do realize that when they're going through a problem with, say, a teacher or a peer or somebody, when they are able to identify it for themselves, they are able to talk to their peers about it.
Right.
And when that gets bigger, people stop talking to themselves about it, and then hence they stop talking to others about it. So just taking it forward from what sir said, I think people need to just be open to it, accepted the fact that yes, like a stomachache, headache, a fever or a cold or a cough happening, it is very all right for anger, sadness, fear, disgust to come along with peace, love, and courage. I think they all have to come in a rainbow shade. So I think just having to talk to yourselves will take care of things.
Right, very well said actually. What do you think, like in this process, what role can educational institutions play? Like how can they strive to make children more empowered and more acceptance, like have more acceptance towards themselves?
I think what is important is that's a very, very important question because youngsters, especially when they're in class 9, 10, 11, 12, and when they go to college, undergraduation, post-graduation. So the important part is that the buck lies on the service provider, and the service provider are the educational institutes, and so these educational institutes can really play a big role. I totally agree, and the first thing which is important is that we need to create the ethos and the culture in the university that mental health is an important part, and mental health is a top priority. Like something like people talking about suicide or bullying or anti-bullying campaign or anti-ragging campaign, correct? Or anti-social, sexual abuse campaign or about social media campaign. So it becomes a culture where everybody from professors to the administrators and to children and policymakers, everybody talks about that, and their flyers, their posters, their campaigns, their debates on that particular topic. So creating an ethos is the first important thing. But before creating an ethos, the important thing is that the right people, that means the policymakers, including chairmen or including the principals or the professor, they should believe into that yes, mental health is something which should be talked about.
Right.
Mental health is something which we have to address it. Recently, I had a talk just 2 months back. I had a talk in Delhi University, and the principal had invited me for a talk. And he had invited, and it was live on the Facebook, it was on the YouTube, it was on a Zoom, and it was an enormous response was there. And I was a speaker on that particular topic, mental health and COVID. And the point was that principal took initiative to coordinate with so many other universities and so many other colleges. And plus, he also disclosed that her daughter is under my care.
Okay.
And he disclosed openly that her daughter is under my care, and I'm thankful to Dr. Gupta for providing the services, providing the help, and helping my daughter and my family to move on. So my point is that the right key people who are the policy makers, who are the game changers, I will say, if the buck comes from the top, absolutely it floats down. And when it floats down, then it starts percolating sidewise.
Right.
That is what is important, is that when the principal and chairman said, yes, it has to happen, and the principal, vice principal, the head of the units, and the graduate teachers, and the coordinators, and the peer counselors, and the school, and the college staff, and the college students, and the college staff, welfare officer, whatever, they all put together the effort to make sure that mental health becomes priority. So if you want to make a mental health priority, you have to believe into it, that mental health is an important part. And I think the time has come. The COVID has given a knock on everybody's doorstep that yes, please look into it. Please don't neglect me. I'm a very important baby. Please take care of me. And I'm very, very important part of you.
Thank you, sir, for making such an important point. Dr. Priyanka, do you want to add something to it?
Well, I think sir has covered a lot of it. I will only elaborate if at all somewhere, but then sir has taken care of the whole of it actually. I think, like sir said, it has to flow down. To give you an example, Dr. Deepak believes in working on your own mental health quite strongly. So do I. And as a result, anybody and everybody in our team has to work on themselves to remain a part of our team. Yeah. Right? Now, if we are teaching that, we are preaching that too. As sir is saying, it has to be coming from the top notch in the schools. If counseling is a regular part of the curriculum, and there is a counselor available in every school, how is the counselor utilized in every school is then a very big question, and that depends upon how the heads deal with it, how the principal, directors, and chairmen deal with the idea of mental health. A lot of times I have seen the counselors getting used only for substitute classes, or for covering up for other things, or for examination, and all those kind of things, when the role is so vast that even 4 to 5 counselors in a school can be less. There is so much of work to be done in a school system. That's not taken care, that's not addressed enough, because the principals do not understand the importance of the work, or the heads don't understand the importance. Then secondly, if we talk about how to bring it into the system, in our education system, I think it goes small. Right from pre-primary, children need to be taught how to identify their emotions, how to spot an emotion, how to identify, how to label an emotion, and then thereafter how to express an emotion appropriately. So if they are upset, how do they express it out? I have a young daughter, and she does not yet know how to express when she is upset, or when she has a demand that doesn't get fulfilled. And I am training her to do that appropriately. When she appropriately desires and expresses her need, it's considered taken care of. But when she's using, say, for example, a tantrum or another way of asking the same, it's not taken care of. Now, because I know I can handle it like that, but not everyone can. So if our school systems put it in the right age, how to be assertive at various ages differently, so that you do not get into malpractices of communication, that has to come early, that has to be taught early. Right. And there have been a lot of programs of life skills and others which have been introduced by CBSE like long back, but I at times find that they are dealt in a very shallow manner. There are times when an art teacher is doing them, when a PE teacher is doing them. There is no synchronization of how to deliver those lectures, how to really teach a child how to express himself appropriately. And when they know how to deal with their own problems, they will grow up to be stronger people.
Exactly, right. As Dr. Gupta was mentioning about policymakers and what important role do they play in this process, how do you think the government at the present can deal with the challenges that are coming? As WHO says that 1 in 4 families is likely to have at least one member who can be facing a behavioral or a mental disorder. So how can we deal with such challenges?
See, one thing very, very important is that if we are creating awareness, then we also should have a service providers.
Right.
So one is that you're creating awareness about mental health. And simultaneously, when you're creating awareness about mental health, you are having programs or having modules, having certain skills to enhance your mental health.
Right.
But simultaneously, sometimes the mental health issues get converted into mental illness. When the mental health issues are getting converted into mental illness, either you can pick it up at the mental health issues level and then try to work on them. Or when they become mental illness, you catch at that point of time and intervene.
Okay.
But if it goes on and becomes a chronic mental illness or chronic disability, then it becomes a tough battle. Correct? Then it becomes a tough battle. So what is important is that we need to promote positive mental health, number one.
Okay.
Second, we need to identify mental illness early or mental health issues early. And after identification, the third important thing is that intervention, appropriate and timely intervention.
Okay.
A lot of time people get intervention, but they're not timely. A lot of time people get timely intervention, but they're not appropriate.
Okay. Yeah.
They get intervention, but it's not appropriate. Correct? Because of various myths and various malpractices and myths and various sort of misunderstandings. A lot of times they know that my son is having a difficulty. But to reach to a right mental health professional, to take the right intervention, to take that bold step, a lot of times where in-laws or parents or father or husband is saying, no, it's nothing like that. It is because of your fault. The child has become like that. She's just a difficult teenager, or she's just that troublesome young boy who wants to throw his tantrums and wants to get his things done. It's just because of mobile addiction, nothing else. Just throw it off. So all these things, a lot of times stops the right time intervention. So promoting positive mental health, identifying mental health issues and mental illness early, timely and appropriate intervention is very, very important. So that's why not only creating awareness, but also having the team, the service providers also to be ready so that that thing can be done. Because if you will create only awareness, but if you don't have a team to address it, if you only create awareness, but you don't have the mental health team to intervene,
right,
what will happen? That is what happens sometimes. Sometimes happens, in a lot of programs, that you create awareness, but you don't have a system to address it. Yeah. And when you don't have a system to address it, then what happens? It leads to a lot of dissatisfaction and lot of uneasiness.
Okay. Dr. Priyanka, do you have anything to add to it?
Well, I totally agree with sir that once you create an awareness, you need to have solutions to the problems that become aware after that.
Right.
Right. So that's totally correct. I would like to also maybe shift the attention to something else, a little more. Every household, like you said, 1 in 4 households will have somebody with a mental illness now. I would like to actually ask people, how many of you actually have a WhatsApp group of your family now? So if there are 5 people, 6 people living in a house, or 4 people living in the house, and if all of them possess a phone, how many of you have a WhatsApp family group in which you share, discuss important things of the family? Now, the very unfortunate thing is now people don't sit on the dinner table anymore and discuss important matters of the family. They're discussed over WhatsApp. In order to talk to somebody who's in the next room, people use a WhatsApp or a phone call instead of having to get up, go there and talk, kind of something. Right. What sir was saying a little earlier in this conversation, that human touch, that having to feel each other, that's kind of going out, and the whole electronic kind of conversations is coming in. Instead of a pat on the back, it is a like. It's changing the way people think and understand things, and that's why in that context, I think that's one of the major contributors for mental health issues to be rising, because we cannot connect with people anymore in real sense. There are so many children having social communication difficulties. Why? Because they are not getting exposed to children of their ages enough in an unstructured manner. Now, why is that happening? Because everybody is on their phones playing a game, or in a structured classroom environment of, say, for a sport or anything else. So everything is getting structured, and so the life of everyone is running on such a fast pace. Nobody has time to slow down, to stop and feel. Leave aside your own self, but to people around you also. If you can't feel yourself, it's like very difficult to feel people around you. Now, when you shut your own emotions, your own thoughts, and emotions and thoughts of the other person down, why would mental health not be on a rise then? Mental health issues not be on a rise then? We are not listening to ourselves. We are not listening to people. We are running in a rat race to chase something, and no one actually knows what it is.
Okay.
Now, if we need to really deal with something, I think people need to just, as families, come together, listen to each other, talk to each other, be with each other, spend some nice time, play games, have some fun with each other. And trust me, in some years of my work with families, I have found that just doing this much takes care of so many problems. Yeah. When family comes together, has fun, has a lighter movement with no controlling, no disciplining, no fault finding into each other, including parents. Parents also feel fault find into each other. So when we stop all that and just give them some fun time, relationships improve, mood improves, health improves, fun improves, and problems drop. It is simple. It's a simple math. And only if people can understand this little thing and begin to do this little thing in their families, a lot of their problems shall be resolved, in my opinion.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining in with us today, and thank you for this scintillating and insightful discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thanks for creating this platform to create more awareness about mental health. Thank you very much. God bless us all.